Hi, I'm Brian from Transylvania. I hope everyone's doing well. Got my Romanian shirt on today, traditional Romanian shirt. Uh, we're going through Second Corinthians, and Paul is about to start bragging. St. Paul is going to brag, sort of, bragging. He doesn't brag in the way that people are traditionally bragging, but he's pointing out his qualifications because his qualifications from the Corinthian church again are coming under question. So he sarcastically, again, Paul can be quite sarcastic, as you may have seen in the last video, or just reading his letters in general, he does have a sarcastic flair about his writing. He is boasting about his suffering. Not exactly things that most people brag about, especially when you have groups of people that are kind of a fake it till you make it group. You try to build yourself up. You try to say, hey, look at me. That I'm basically that guy. I'm the guy that you want to come to. I'm the guy who's confident. In other words, you're faking your confidence so you can have opportunities to really apply the confidence that will really be there when you actually have what you say you have. Paul's not faking it. He's not faking what he's been through. He's being very, very sincere, and that's probably what's so frustrating. I think a lot of people who've been in the mission field understand this frustration because they are literally putting themselves out to meet people with the gospel. They are literally going out of their way, putting themselves, knowing the value of the treasure God is giving them, trying to meet them with that treasure that is Christ. And to come home to very, very comfortable people who get to basically act like you've done absolutely nothing, that's really hard. That's really hard. I've experienced that multiple times in churches, and many other missionaries have, and it's understandably frustrating. Now, part of that is natural because for the established lives of people in churches, they have the routine, things have stayed the same, where people who are on the mission field are embracing a whole lot of changes. They're meeting a whole lot of changes head on. And there's a lot of difficulty in that. So this is the scene we kind of have with Paul. Paul is writing the Corinthian church, a place that has false teachers in it right now, who are apparently bragging about how religious they are. They're putting forward a lot of Jewish aesthetics, apparently, because Paul says, look, if these guys are going to brag about being Jewish, I can do that too. And frankly, a lot of missionaries find themselves in that situation as well. People talking about how Christian they are, how Christian they are, how Christian they are. But then you have a missionary who's walking the walk and talking the talk. They come home and they're like, oh, Jew, great, whatever. It's hard. It's really, really difficult. Let's read about how Paul addresses that difficulty as he talks about his suffering and puts forward an ironic boast. Verse 16 of chapter 11. I repeat, let no one take me for a fool. But if you do, then receive me just as you would a fool, so that I may do a little boasting. In this self-confident boasting, I am not talking as the Lord would, but as a fool. So he's lowering his level of speech. He's lowering it to the level of people who want to have their ears tickled. Their ears are being tickled by the false prophets that are in Corinth. So Paul's saying, you know what? Fine. I'll stoop to their level. I'm going to boast right now. Since many are boasting in the way the world does, I too will boast. You gladly put up with fools since you are so wise. Sarcasm. In fact, even put up with anyone who enslaves you or exploits you or takes advantage of you or pushes himself forward or slaps you in the face. Some leaders will tell you that they do a lot of things for you in love, but actually they're doing it for the sake of personal exploitation, raising themselves up so that they have a chance to feel superior. One piece of language I often hear leadership say, and I've said this in the last video, I've probably said it in a few other videos, is saying that I am the first among equals. Be careful of that. Be careful of that phrasing. It's not helpful, it's dangerous, and you should immediately put your guard up and start asking questions when you hear it. To my shame, I admit that we were too weak for that. He says, to my shame, I'm too weak to bully you guys. Hey, sorry. Again, Paul's sarcasm. Anyone else dares to boast about, I am speaking as a fool. In other words, it's like, I'm not being serious about this. I'm goofing around. I also dare to boast about, because everybody seems to be bragging in this church, or a lot of people in leadership positions seem to be. Are they Hebrew? So am I. This is apparently a list of things that leaders in the Corinthian church were bragging about. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they Abraham's descendants? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? I am out of my mind to talk like this. I am more. So he even prefaces that one right there. It's like, he says, I am more. It's like, okay, so they're serving Christ. So am I. But I'm doing it in a more mature way. And I like how, for that one specifically, he says, I am out of my mind to talk like this. It's not uncommon for me to hear people ask questions like, well, how Christian are they? They're saved. You know, if you are following Christ, you're a Christian. That's not about levels. That is about positioning. God has given you the position of a royal priesthood if you are a Christian. Now, some people may be more mature than others. That shouldn't be a competition, though. That should say, okay, I see you're over here because this, and this. You've been a Christian for a long time. You've been serving for a long time. I can see that in this way you are more mature. And as a body, we can embrace that. I can embrace people who are more mature than me. And I hope that people can embrace, the fact that I need to learn. I can embrace people that need to learn. And I hope that they can embrace the areas in which I am more mature in some ways. Now, some ways there may be important because I don't think that what we're looking at is a spectrum as much as we're looking at different levels. People have different talents, people have different abilities, people have different experiences, people have different lives. People have so many diverse ways about them that saying, well, I'm obviously the most mature, it's short-sighted. We need to start looking at things in more of a level fashion than a spectrum fashion. We need to, and spectrums, even get reduced further to things being binary. Yes, no, right, wrong. And those are very, very strong statements, and there's a place for them, but there's also a necessity to recognize diversity in giftedness, in creation, and in people. Now let's get back to Paul. Paul just said in verse 23, are these servants of Christ? I am out of my mind to talk like this. I am more. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently. He would go to, people would get upset at Paul for what he was saying, and they would put him in prison. Been flogged more severely. He was punished for the sake of the gospel in Jewish circles. I have been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I've received from Jews 40 lashes minus 1, 39 lashes, 5 times. 3 times I was beaten with rods. That would be by the Greeks. And that was actually illegal because Paul was a Roman citizen. So, suffering Greek and Roman punishment illegally for the sake of the gospel. Now, keep in mind this, a lot of this would not necessarily, well, records were better in Roman times than they had been in other times of history. Still, we're not talking about serious databases where people could look things up and say, we see that Paul is a victim of 5 accounts of lashes and 3 accounts of beatings. I was stoned once. That would also may not have gone in the database. The best Paul can do is write about it and have us read about it later, to this very day. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in open sky. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits. He traveled a lot, and he would not have had the same safety that we have today. Cameras all over the place. It's this day and age, we're very, very blessed to be able to take a video of something and say, hey, the evidence is here. Hopefully they don't get rid of that in Romania. There's talk of that. In danger from my own countrymen, in danger from Gentiles. So he's been in danger from Jews. He's been in danger from Gentiles. In danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false brothers. So, false Christians that supposedly would have his back, he was in danger from them too. And that is dangerous. False teachers are dangerous. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Now keep in mind, this is his boasting. It's like, look, I have done all of this for the sake of Christ, and these guys are coming in to your church. They're coming in among you saying, oh, that Paul, he's nothing. Hey, check out how Jewish I am. Yeah, I think it's that weird. Besides everything else, I face daily pressure of my concern for all the churches. Paul went from church to church. He helped establish many churches, and he cared about each one of them. Some people, they go to one, some people in this day and age, they go to one church their entire lives. I've been to many churches. I've experienced heartbreak from rejection in some of these churches. But still, the children of God are there. I'm not reading, I'm talking about what I experienced. I've had Christians talk about me in a way that I am less Christian than they are. Paul addresses that and talks about what foolishness that is. I've had churches talk about how if God wanted me to really be in the mission, tell me, well, if God really wanted you to be in the mission field, why doesn't he just give you the money now, huh? Huh? Well, I don't know, but I'm going out on faith and going to try to make that work. And now I'm here in Europe. So I guess God answered that prayer. What do you say about that? You know, what do you say about when people try to tell you you can't do it because the money's not there? You go forward. You go forward for the sake of the gospel. You know, and see what God does. God brought me to a number of countries before bringing me to Romania, and I'm very thankful for those journeys. I hope that I was a blessing to the people in those various places. I'm very thankful for my time in a variety of countries, and I'm thankful that each time it was for gospel-centered endeavors. So I'm going to keep doing that. Apparently that's what Paul kept doing. So thank you, St. Paul, for your example. Verse 29. Who is weak? And I do not feel weak. Who is led into sin? And I do not inwardly burn. Let me go back to 28 to get more context. Besides everything else, I face daily pressures of my concern for all churches. Who is weak? And I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin? And I do not burn inwardly? Okay, so he's admitting his vulnerability. I mean, talk about a branding nightmare right there. It's like this flies in the face of Americans' fake it till you make it culture. You know, flies in the face of the business culture that says, oh, never admit you're wrong. Paul here is saying, who is weak? And I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin? And I do not burn inwardly. I don't have desires. He's human. He's pointing out his humanity. And so many Christian leaders tried to make themselves above their humanity. You know, above, and the humanity of congregation members who sometimes, honestly, get looked upon as peasants. That's not fair. That's not okay. Let's continue. Paul is continuing his boast. He's obviously worked very hard and sacrificially in his ministries. If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. The God and Father of the Lord Jesus, who is to be praised forever, knows that I am not lying. In Damascus, the governor under King Artaeus had the city of the Damascenes guarded in order to arrest me. But I was lowered in a basket from a window in the wall and slipped through his hands. So he's even been on the run from the government. Yeah, Paul went through a lot for the sake of the gospel. There's a lot of people who do go through a lot for the sake of the gospel. There's a lot of people who try to use the gospel for the sake of profit. And it's not that, don't hear me saying that people in ministry should not get paid. I think they should. I really think they should. At the same time, if somebody is making a $500,000 salary, there's reason to kind of tilt our head and say, what's that about? Do they need a $500,000 salary? It's worth it to ask questions. A lot of Christians suffer, and a lot of them suffer for the sake of the gospel. They should be able to talk about that. They should. They shouldn't be so quickly shut down and made to feel like if they talk about their suffering, that they're doing something wrong or bad. If they're insincere and actually being disobedient, that's one thing. Like, if you're in the Bible it says, it talks about how God does not want our suffering, but wants our obedience. If suffering is being used to cover up disobedience, then that's one thing. But if the suffering is sincerely for Christ, it's not right to accuse the one suffering of disobedience just because they're talking about their suffering. Paul suffered. He was going to a church where people were making fun of him. Not the first time that they were making fun of him. This was not a place where Paul knew it was a place where he wasn't going to be necessarily proud for himself, but proud for what God was doing there. He was ministering to the church of Corinth beyond himself, and many people who go to church are ministering in the church and to the church beyond themselves. So think about the people around you. Think about who's really doing the work. Who's working that doesn't get the same thanks and praise. And try to remember that we're all equal. That's all I have for this passage. Take care and God bless. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm Brian from Transylvania. Arrivederci.